Hi everyone, I'm Andy Neal, and this is a motion quick tip for Final Cut Pro 10. Today I thought I'd show off a little bit about how closely integrated motion is with the new Final Cut Pro. To do that, I figured I'd show you how to create an animated title like this one in Motion 5. I'm going to start off by creating a new project. Now in the project browser, you're going to see a number of template choices like this. I'm going to choose the Final Cut title, and up here in the upper right hand side, there's the presets, and under the presets I want to choose Broadcast HD 1080 because that's the largest standard size. That way I can use the graphic even if my Final Cut project is smaller. Graphics that is scaled down to the size of a project look a lot better than the ones that have to scale up. For the frame rate, I'm going to use 2997 because that's the most common for NTSC. And duration, I'll just go ahead and leave it at 5 seconds. Click Open, and there's my project. Now, when you get the project, what you're going to see is a couple of layers that have already been added for you. You've got this title background layer, and you have this text layer here. We really don't need the drop zone layer unless the project we're making is going to be using blend modes or some other kind of compositing that requires an active layer to see the results. But it doesn't hurt anything to leave it. I'm just going to turn the group off so that I don't have to look at it while I'm working. Okay, start by creating a new group. Down here at the bottom of the layers pane, just click this little plus to create a new group, and we're going to label it ribbon. To make this ribbon, I'm going to use a simple technique that takes advantage of motion's shape behaviors. Click on the shape tool and hold it down to reveal the other shapes that you can choose from. Choose line, and then in the canvas I want to draw just a regular line, but hold down the shift key to constrain the line so that it stays horizontal. Now in the inspector, under the style section of the shape tab, change the start cap and end cap to none, and then crank up the width to about 100 so that we have a nice thick ribbon segment. Now for this particular project, we need 3 segments. So with the line selected, duplicate it by hitting Command D on the keyboard. And do this twice so that we have a total of 3 lines. Now at this point, it's probably a good idea to label them. So with the bottom layer, label it line 1. Then the second layer, call that one line 2. And finally, the top one, we'll call line 3. Okay, now reselect line 1 and then click and drag it down towards the bottom left of the frame. What I want is I want the line to come up from the bottom of the frame and then fold back on itself. To do this, I'm going to need to use the distort tool. Go back down to the selection tool and click and hold the button down to reveal all the other selection tools. About midway down that list is the distort tool, so select that. Then grab the center command point on the left hand side and drag it down below the frame. We can grab the right hand side now and adjust that if we need to move its position as well. This is going to keep the edges of the line vertical, which is what we want. Now if you want to be able to see past the edge of the frame, you can do so by hitting Shift V on the keyboard. That'll show you the area around the frame, not just what's inside the frame. When you finish positioning line 1, select line 2 in the layers pane and go ahead and drag it down. Just make sure that you're dragging from the center of the shape and not by any of the control boxes. Bring line 2 down so that the right edges line up. It doesn't have to be perfect, but get it at least in the neighborhood. Then grab the left edge and again distort it, and this time we're going to kind of go back a little bit like it's folding back on itself. And then when you get it to where you like it, grab line 3 and drag it down, aligning the 2 left edges. Okay, so that's the basic look. It looks pretty good right now, but looks can be deceiving. Let's add a light. Click on the light icon down here, and when the dialog box comes up, choose Switch to 3D. Now we have a point light in the center of our canvas. Grab the light and drag it down so that it's more or less in the middle of the graphic. And maybe I'm going to pull it back a little bit in Z space. Then go to the light tab in the inspector and change it from point light to a spotlight. And reposition a little bit. And what I want is a nice soft drop off in the light. So I'm going to lower the cone angle, bring it down quite a bit, but then I'm going to raise the soft edge so that I have a nice drop off of light. You can tweak this to however you like. Okay. Maybe it'd look a little bit better if we colored the ribbon. In fact, it would be nice if we could control the color of the ribbon from within Final Cut. Select line 3, and in the Style section of the Shape tab, change the color from white to a blue or a purple, something like that. In order to ensure that all 3 layers are colored the same, I'm going to link the color of this layer to all the other layers, and here's how you do it. Select line 2, and in the Shape tab, click the Animation drop-down menu. That's this little triangle here. And then go to Add Parameter Behavior, Link. Now, in the Behaviors tab, you'll see a Source Object Well. What you do is you grab the line 3 layer and drop it into that well, and presto, it links the color of this layer to the color of the layer inside the source well. Now, to get this to work for line 1, all I have to do is copy the link behavior. Hold down the Option key and drag from line 2 to line 1 to make a copy of the behavior. And voila! Now, if I go back to line 3 and change the brush color for line 3, all the other lines change color as well. Perfect. Now, to be able to use this in Final Cut, we have to publish the brush color. So in line 3, go to the Animation menu and choose Publish. And that's all there is to it. That parameter will show up inside Final Cut. Now, I'm just going to double check my light and make sure it's exactly how I want it. Make any changes to it that I want, to its position, whatever. When I'm finished, I'm not going to want to see that icon anymore. And I can turn it off simply by going to the View menu in the canvas and deselecting the Show 3D Overlays. Okay, now looking at my ribbon, there's something that's not quite right about it. This second piece right here, it looks a little too flat. This is probably because I didn't rotate the piece in 3D space. I just sort of cheated the 3D look by using the Distort tool. Select line 2, and in the Properties tab, go down to 4 corners, which is the parameter that the Distort tool was affecting, and hit this little curved arrow to reset the parameter. Then twirl open Rotation and adjust the Y rotation a little bit so that it is now turned in 3D space. And then I'll have to reposition it. And what you may notice, and I may have to adjust the rotation a little bit to about, I'm going to say around -60. It looks about right. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see. What you may notice is that line 2 is now intersecting line 3. And I want line 2 to be completely behind line 3. So one way I can do that is if I select line 3, I can adjust its Z position by dragging on the blue arrow in the 3D Transform tool. But the problem is I start to move it out of the light, and that's not what I want to do. So I'm just going to undo. One of the other things I can try is to adjust the Z position back for the line 2 piece. So I'm going to twirl open the position for line 2 and just adjust the value until it's completely behind the line 3 segment, and then I can just reposition it in the right spot. I'm going to zoom in here so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so it's now completely behind line 3, but I can barely see it, so I'm going to move line 1 down a little bit so that you can see line 2, and then I'm going to select the Distort tool again and grab the control points and just line these up with the edges of the other 2 lines so that it looks more or less connected. This side doesn't really need it much. It's pretty close to being correct. Good. And zoom out a little bit so you can see what it looks like, and that actually looks really good. Okay, now I need to animate it. With line 1 selected, and then go down to Behaviors, Shape, write on. Now I want it to write on the shape, but it doesn't need to be this long. It only needs to be about 8 frames or so. So place the playhead on frame 9 and hit O on the keyboard to trim the behavior to that point. Now if I scrub here, you can see how it just draws the layer on perfectly. Hit Shift O to jump to the end of that behavior, and then hit the right arrow key to advance 1 frame forward in the timeline. Then select line 2 and hit I on the keyboard to trim that whole layer to that point. Now once again, I'm going to copy a behavior to another layer, this time the write on behavior. I'm going to select it, hold down the Option key, and drag it onto line 2, and now I have an 8 frame write on behavior for line 2. But if I scrub forward, you can see that in this case it's writing the line on in the wrong direction. I'm going to zoom in so you can see. If I scrub through here, you see it's writing it on backwards, and that's not the direction we want it to do. So that's pretty simple. Just go into the Behaviors tab to where it says Direction and switch from forward to reverse. So there it is. Now it's going in the right direction. Hit Shift O to jump to the end of this behavior and then advance 1 frame forward. Select line 3 and hit I to trim it to that point. But now for line 3, we want to do something a little different than using the write on behavior. This is because we're going to need to have a title to go with this layer. And I want the title and the final segment of the ribbon to be revealed at the same time. It just so happens we do have a text layer already. It was the one that was provided for us by the template when we started the project. So drag the text layer into our ribbon group and make sure that it goes above line 3. Just drag the text on top of our ribbon, and in the text tab, choose whatever font you like. I'm going to go with Futura, and maybe size it up a little bit so that it fits the ribbon a little bit better. Looks good. One thing we have to be careful of is the text layer has to be the same length as the line 3 layer, otherwise it'll be on screen the whole time. So select line 3, hit Shift I to jump to the beginning of that layer, then select the text layer and hit I to trim it to that point. Okay, now that they're the same length, select both the text layer and line 3, right click, choose Group from the menu, and label this group Text. Now to reveal this final segment along with the text, we're going to use a mask. But there's a problem. You can't have a mask inside a 3D group, but you can have a 2D group inside a 3D group. So that's what we're going to do. Just click this little icon for the text group, and it'll change the group from a 3D group to a 2D group. And now we can add a mask to it. Go down to the rectangle mask tool, and then drag a rectangle around the ribbon and the text. It's okay that it's a little bit bigger. Hit Q on the keyboard to bring up the 3D transform tool, and then slide with the red arrow here to view how the text is going to reveal itself. And that looks pretty good. Now to animate this, I'm going to use a throw behavior. So with the mask layer selected, go to Behaviors, Basic Motion, Throw. And again, we don't need it to be very long. I'm just going to say about 10 frames. So hold down Shift key and use the right arrow to jump the playhead forward 10 frames in the timeline, and then hit O on the keyboard to trim the behavior to that point. Now, to do the animation, we need to start with the mask completely off. So just grab the red arrow and drag it until the text and ribbon are completely hidden. Then, in the Behaviors tab, go to the throw velocity, twirl it open, and we just need to adjust the X velocity here. So just drag to add to it. If you want it to go faster, hold down the Shift key while you do this, and it'll scrub a little faster. And just drag it until the mask is now revealing the text and the final segment of our ribbon. When you're done with that, just scrub a little further in the timeline and create a play range by hitting Command Option O, and then play it through and see how it looks. Awesome. Looks great. Time to finish off the graphic. I'm going to add a little bit of a fade out so that I don't have to do that inside Final Cut. select the entire ribbon group and go to Behaviors, Basic Motion, Fade In, Fade Out. In the Behaviors tab, make the fade in time 0, but leave the fade out time as 20. And just play through the project once or twice to get a feel for how it looks. And that's it. Now we're ready to save. When you do, you're going to get this dialog box asking you about themes and categories. Every effect, title, generator, or transition must be associated with the category, but themes are optional. Since I'm creating my own set of custom titles, I'm going to create a new category called Custom. Now I don't need to have a theme. If I was going to be making a bunch of graphics that all kind of using the same ribbon idea, then I might want to make a theme so that I can group all of those effects together. But since I'm just making the one title, I don't need to worry about creating a theme. I'm going to label my template Ribbon Lower Third, and then make sure to deselect the Include Unused Media box. Click Publish, and what it's going to do is it's going to save that project to your Movies folder. You'll see a folder inside there called Motion Templates, and then look under Titles, and you will see a folder called Custom. That's your new category, and inside there is our Ribbon Lower Third project, and it's ready to go. So now I'm going to flip over to Final Cut and open up the title browser right here. On the left hand side you can see our brand new custom category, and inside there is our Ribbon Lower Third. I can add it really easily by just double clicking it. It'll drop it right onto my clip, and if I scrub through or play through, it looks pretty good. If I go into the inspector, you'll see that I have that published parameter where I can change the brush color. So I can change it to any kind of color I want. So maybe I'll go with a little bit of a red here. Might work well with that. And I can double click the text inside the canvas to start typing it out. And I'll just put Selma Hayek. Wait, I'm actually not sure how to spell Hayek, so I'm just going to switch this to Selma. Alright. Also, you get all the basic text parameters as well, just like you would for any other title. I can change the size, the font size, the alignment, any of those things. Add an outline, add a glow, add a drop shadow, whatever. But there's one more thing you need to be aware of when you're creating custom projects for Final Cut Pro 10. If I grab the edge of the title and I drag it out so that it's much longer than before, and then play the animation, what you're going to see is the animation is slower now, slower than it was before when the title was only 5 seconds. This is because Final Cut is stretching the length of the entire motion project past the 5-second mark, which was our initial duration. If I make the title smaller than 5 seconds, it will animate on really, really quickly. And this is not what I want. What I want it to do is I want it to animate on at the same speed every time, no matter how long or how short the project is. In order to do that, we need to utilize Motion specialty markers. So flip back over to Motion and hit F6 to open up the timeline. Scrub in the timeline until after the point where all the animation is finished. It doesn't have to be right after. It can be any point after the animation is finished. Make sure no layers are selected, but then hit M to create a marker. Then scrub forward in the timeline towards the end till right before it starts to fade out, and mark a second marker. Then right-click and choose Edit Marker from the menu. In the Edit Marker dialog, you will see a drop-down for Type. Select it and choose Build Out Mandatory. Then click this little left arrow here to jump to the other marker and choose Build In Mandatory for that. Now when I do that, you'll notice that it changes the look of the markers, and you have this sort of yellow area in between. Now what we just did is we told Final Cut that the part of the motion project that happens before that first marker has to play at its normal speed, and also at the end, anything after that last marker has to play at its normal speed. So when Final Cut stretches or shortens the motion project, it's only allowed to do that within that space between those two markers. Hit Save and flip back over to Final Cut. Now if you make a change to one of your custom titles, you have to reapply the title before the change will take effect. So I'm just going to delete what I have in here and reapply it to my project. Now I'll just move this to the front again so that I can stretch the edge and make it a really long title. But this time, when I play it, the ribbon animates on at its normal speed. And now if I make the title really short, it still animates at the same exact speed as before. Perfect. So now, no matter how long or short the title is, it will still animate on and animate off the same speed. And there you have it, a custom ribbon title for your Final Cut Pro projects. I'm Andy Neal, and this is a motion quick tip for Final Cut Pro 10.